Okay, so have you ever thought about like when you buy your favorite cereal at different stores, is it really the same?
Hmm, that's an interesting thought.
Right. Like I was grabbing some I think it was Cheerios the other day,
Yeah.
and I just had this weird feeling like, is this the same as the one from that other store?
I mean, it's probably crossed a lot of people's minds.
And it turns out we're going to be deep diving into this today. Even name brands aren't always the same everywhere you go.
It's true, yeah.
It's wild. So we're going to be looking at some of the secrets that grocery stores have, how store brands are doing these days, the quality of fresh food, and we'll even look at how Walmart, Target, and Costco approach this whole thing. So yeah, you might be surprised by what you learn. You ready to dive in?
Absolutely. I think a lot of people just assume that, if you're buying a national brand, it's going to be consistent.
Right.
A bag of chips from brand X should be the same no matter where you buy it.
Yeah, you'd think so.
But the reality is that things like, where those products are coming from, those regional distribution centers, how long they've been sitting on the shelf,
Oh, right.
all that can affect the quality, even the taste.
Yeah, I've totally had that experience where you buy a bag of chicks and they're just stale. And
Right.
you're like, wait a minute, these are supposed to be my favorite. Is it the chips or is it, like you said, the supply chain?
Yeah, it makes you wonder,
Yes,
right?
it really does.
So that's one thing. And then I think it's fascinating to think about the rise of store brands
Yeah, yeah.
because, they used to have this reputation of being, well, not as good.
Right, right. Like the off brand.
But a lot of them have really stepped up their game,
Yeah, they have.
and they're often just as good as or even better than the national brands.
Oh, wow.
And they're cheaper too, so.
I've heard people say that, but I guess I haven't really paid that much attention to it. What's driving that change?
Well, Consumer Reports actually, they found that more than half of store brands are just as good or better than the name brands,
Oh, wow.
and for less money.
So it's not just a perception.
No, it's real.
That's amazing. So it's like, are they using the same ingredients? What's happening?
Well, in some cases, it's actually the same manufacturers who make the big brands. They're also making the store brands.
Oh, that's really interesting.
So they're using, their expertise, the same production lines. They're just making it for a wider market.
That makes a lot of sense. So, like, which stores are doing this really well? Like, with the store
Trader
brands?
Joe's is a great example. They've really built up this loyal following,
Oh,
right,
everybody loves Trader Joe's.
with these unique products, and they're high quality, but under their own label.
Oh, right, right.
And some people even say that some of their stuff is made by the same companies that supply, like, the really fancy brands.
Wow, that's a great tip.
So you could be getting, like, gourmet level stuff, but without the huge price tag.
I am going to have to check that out.
Yeah, it's worth looking into. But there's another thing we got to talk about when we're talking about grocery store quality, and that's the fresh food.
Yeah.
The meat, the dairy, the produce. That's a whole other ballgame.
Yeah, okay, let's break that down. Like, what makes that so much more complicated than, like, the packaged stuff?
Well, with fresh food, so much of it depends on things beyond just the brand. Like where did that meat come from? How was it handled? How long has it been sitting there?
Oh,
It
right.
all makes a difference in what you're getting.
Okay, so let's start with meat. What should we be looking at when we're, like, trying to figure out if it's good quality or not?
So first of all, think about the sourcing. Like where is that meat actually coming from?
Yeah.
A lot of times that mass-produced meat, it comes from these giant factory farms,
Right, right.
but you might have specialty butchers who are getting their meat from like smaller local farms
Okay.
where they care about how the animals are treated and all that.
Oh, interesting.
And that can actually make a difference in the quality, the taste, even how nutritious it is.
So it's not just about the cut of meat, but it's like the whole life of the animal almost.
Yeah, I could say that.
Huh. That makes me wonder, like, what about all those labels, like grass fed and all that? Is that real or is that just marketing hype?
Well, there's definitely a lot of marketing out there,
Right.
but there is some evidence that how the animals are raised, it can change the flavor, even what the meat is made of.
That's fascinating.
So yeah, sourcing matters.
Okay, so sourcing's important. What else?
Well, there's also that USDA grading system. It's voluntary, but you'll see it on a lot of packages.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that. Like
Oh.
prime, choice, but I don't know. I've never really understood what that meant.
Yeah, it can be kind of confusing. But basically, it's about how much marbling there is.
Marbling.
That's the fat that's in the meat,
Okay.
and that's what makes it tender and flavorful.
Oh.
So prime has the most, then choice, then select.
Yeah.
There's other grades, but those are the ones you see most often.
Okay. So more marbling generally is better.
Yeah, generally, yeah. but it's not the only thing to look at.
Right, because, like, you could have a good cut of meat, but if the store doesn't handle it right.
Exactly, exactly. Like if it's exposed to air too much or the temperature changes a lot, that can mess it up,
Right.
even if you picked a good piece of meat to begin with.
Oh, wow. So it sounds like you really have to pay attention to where you buy your meat too, not just like what you buy.
Exactly. But before we get into specific stores, what about dairy?
Okay, yeah, let's talk about dairy.
A lot of people think, milk is milk.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if it's the big brand or the store brand,
Right.
but there are differences there too.
Okay, I'm interested. What are we looking for here?
One big thing is it organic or not?
Oh,
Organic milk, it comes from cows that don't get antibiotics or hormones,
yeah,
and they eat organic food.
right.
And that's something a lot of people care about, right?
Yeah.
The whole, like, health impact, the environment, all of that.
So even though the milk might look the same, it's really different depending on how the cows are raised and what they eat.
Exactly. And then there's how they process it. Like, some milk, they do this ultra-pasteurization.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that on cartons. What is that? Exactly.
Like, basically, they heat it up really high for a short time,
Okay.
so it lasts longer on the shelf.
Right.
But some people think it changes the taste.
That's interesting. So it's like longer shelf life, but maybe a different taste,
Mm-hmm.
a trade-off.
Right, right. And then don't forget about, like, added ingredients.
Oh, yeah, like what?
Some brands, they'll put in thickeners or sweeteners, like in flavored milk or yogurt.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that obviously changes the taste. And it can change how healthy it is, too.
Oh, wow. So dairy is a lot more complicated than I thought. All right, let's move on to the last one. Produce.
That's got to be the biggest test, right? Like,
Yeah.
how fresh is the store? Yeah, for sure. Produce is tricky. It goes bad so fast.
Yeah.
So it really depends on how they handle it and store it.
So what should we be looking for there?
Well, sourcing is really important, like with the meat.
Okay.
If it's local, it's probably fresher
Right.
because it didn't have to travel as far.
It makes sense.
Less time on a truck, more time on the shelf before it starts to wilt.
Yeah, and you can definitely taste the difference, like between something that's in season and local and something that's been shipped across the country.
For sure, for
Yeah.
sure. And beyond sourcing, look at how they're displaying it, storing it.
Yeah.
Is it the right temperature? Are they
Right.
rotating it regularly?
Yeah, because you want the stuff in the front to be the freshest, not the stuff in the back that's been there forever.
Exactly, exactly.
I imagine stores that sell a lot of produce probably have fresher stuff just because it's moving more quickly.
You're right. If you see a busy produce section, they're probably getting new deliveries all the time.
Yeah,
'Cause it's not sitting around for too long.
that makes sense. Okay, so it's not just avoiding the bruised apple. It's about finding a store that's really on top of their produce game.
Exactly.
Okay, wow, we've covered a lot. Like the brands can be different, store brands are actually good now, and fresh food is a whole world of its own.
It is.
I feel like I'm seeing grocery shopping in a new light.
I'm glad.
But even within all this, I guess it varies from store to store.
It does, yeah. And that brings us to our next point, which is how these different retailers, how do they think about quality?
Oh, yeah, let's get into that. We've got Walmart, Target, and Costco. Those are the big ones. They all
Yeah.
have their own way of doing things. So, what can shoppers expect?
Let's start with Walmart.
Okay.
They're the giant, right?
Yeah.
Huge selection, low prices.
Everyday low prices.
Exactly. So their focus is on being affordable, making groceries easy to get for everyone.
Makes sense,
But that can sometimes mean that they're putting price first,
right?
and that can affect the quality, especially with the fresh stuff.
Okay, so, like, I might get a good deal on pantry staples at Walmart, but the produce might be a gamble.
It can be. It really depends on the specific store and who their suppliers are.
Okay.
Some Walmarts have amazing produce, others not so much.
Right, right.
They're all about volume and efficiency.
Yeah,
So they might not be as focused on the little details as like a smaller grocery store.
right. Okay, so what about Target? They seem to be trying to step up their grocery game with that, what is it, Good and Gather brand.
Yeah, they are. Target's trying to attract people who want quality but still want a good price.
Yeah, yeah.
So their Good and Gather stuff, it's all about good ingredients.
Right.
They have organic and like fancier options. They're trying to compete with those higher end grocery stores.
Okay, so they're going for like the best of both worlds.
Exactly.
It's ambitious, but I think it's working for them.
It seems to be.
Yeah.
And then there's Costco.
Costco. Yeah.
They're known for having really good store brands, especially that Kirkland signature stuff.
Oh, yeah, Kirkland.
They've got a lot of fans because they offer good quality stuff, but in bulk
Right.
and at good prices.
Right, right. Kirkland, like the king of bulk buying. But how do they do it? How do they keep the quality high and the prices down?
It's their business model.
Yeah.
They have that membership fee, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So they don't have to make as much profit on each item.
Oh, right.
Plus, they buy so much stuff they can get good deals from their suppliers.
Makes sense.
So they get good ingredients and products for less money, and they pass that savings on to their members.
So they're like cutting out the middleman and using their size to their advantage.
Exactly. And they're especially known for their Kirkland meat and dairy.
Oh, yeah.
People rave about their bacon and cheese.
I've heard that.
It's like they're really putting effort into their store brand.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, and that's a key takeaway. There's no one right answer when it comes to grocery shopping.
Right.
Different stores are good for different things.
So it's all about figuring out what's important to you.
Exactly. Do you want the absolute lowest price?
Yeah.
Are you looking for organic stuff?
Right?
Do you like the bulk buying at Costco?
Yeah, yeah.
It all depends.
It's like choose your own adventure, but for groceries?
I like that.
Yeah.
Because really it's about finding what works for you.
This has been so eye-opening. I had no idea there was so much to think about with grocery shopping.
Yeah, there's a lot going on behind the scenes.
Definitely.
And the more you know, the better choices you can make.
For sure. Is there anything else we should cover before we finish this part of our deep dive?
Actually, there's one more thing we haven't talked about.
Yeah.
Something that often gets overlooked. Packaging.
Packaging, you mean like the size of the cereal box and stuff?
That's part of it, but it's more than that.
Okay.
Packaging, it really affects how the food stays fresh, how long it lasts, and even the environment.
Wow, I never really thought about packaging as being that important.
Well, for one thing, different materials do different things.
Like what?
Some block out light better, and light can make certain foods go bad.
Oh, right.
Some are better at keeping moisture out, like, those little silica gel packets you find in some packages.
Oh, yeah.
Those are meant to absorb moisture, so things stay crispy.
Huh. I always wondered what those were for.
Yeah, they're actually pretty important. And then you have to think about the environmental impact.
Right, right.
Some materials are easier to recycle, and some you can even compost.
So it's not all created equal?
Nope. And that's where it gets tricky for shoppers.
Oh.
Because it's not always obvious from the label what's the best choice, for the environment.
This is a lot to keep track of. I feel like I need a degree in grocery shopping.
It can feel overwhelming, yeah.
Yeah.
But the main thing is just to be aware of these things and make good choices whenever you can.
Right, right. Okay, well, this has been incredible. I'm going to have to start paying more attention to all this stuff when I go shopping.
I think you'll be surprised what you find.
I think so, too. All right, well, we'll continue our deep dive into grocery store secrets next time.
Sounds good.
See you then.
See ya.
Yeah, it does sound like, yeah, you got to think about not just what you're buying, but where you're buying it from.
For sure, for sure.
Certain stores are probably just better at handling fresh food, right?
Precisely. But before we jump into looking at specific retailers,
Right.
let's talk about dairy.
Okay, yeah, dairy.
A lot of people, I think, they assume milk is milk.
Yeah, you just grab whatever's on sale.
Right, whether it's the big name brand or the store brand, it's all the same.
Yeah.
But, like everything else, there are some nuances.
Okay, I'm curious. What kind of things make dairy different besides just the name on the carton?
Well, one key thing is it organic?
Oh, right.
So organic milk, that means the cows aren't given antibiotics or hormones.
Yeah.
And they're fed organic feed.
Right.
And that's a big deal for a lot of people.
Yeah, it is.
They're concerned about the health impacts, the environment, all that.
So even though it might look the same in the glass, it's really different depending on how the cows are raised and what they eat.
Exactly. And then you've got different ways of processing it. Like some milk is ultra pasteurized.
Ultra pasteurized. I've seen that on the cartons, but I never really knew what it meant.
So basically, they heat it up to a really high temperature, but only for a short time.
Okay.
And that makes it last longer on the shelf.
Oh, right. So it has a longer shelf life.
Exactly. But some people say it can change the flavor.
Interesting. So it's kind of a trade-off then. Longer shelf life, but maybe it tastes different.
Yeah, it's a trade-off. And then you've got added ingredients, too.
Oh, right.
Some brands will add things like thickeners or sweeteners, especially to like flavored milk or yogurt.
Yeah, I've seen that.
And that changes the taste for sure. And it can affect how healthy it is.
It makes sense. Okay, so dairy's more complex than I thought. Let's move on to the last one in our fresh food trifecta. Produce. I feel like that's the real test of how fresh a store is.
You're not wrong. Produce is tough. because it's so perishable, so sensitive to, how it's handled, how it's stored.
Right. So what are we looking for when we're trying to figure out if the produce is good quality?
Well, sourcing is key, just like with meat.
Okay, so local is better.
Usually, yeah. Local produce is often fresher because it hasn't had to travel as far.
Right.
Less time on the truck means more time on the shelf before it starts to go bad.
Yeah, you can definitely tell the difference between like a tomato that's in season and grown nearby versus one that's been shipped across the country.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And beyond sourcing, pay attention to how they're displaying the produce, how it's stored.
Okay.
Is it at the right temperature? Are they rotating it regularly so the older stuff doesn't get buried in the back?
Right, right. You don't want to end up with like the wilted lettuce from the bottom of the pile. I bet stores that sell a lot of produce probably have fresher stuff just because they're going through it faster.
You're exactly right. If you see a busy produce section, chances are they're getting frequent deliveries and keeping things moving.
That makes sense. Okay, so it's not just about avoiding the bruised apple, it's about finding a store that really takes care of their produce.
Precisely.
All right, we've covered a lot of ground here, from those surprising differences in national brands to the rise of store brands, and now the whole world of fresh food. I feel like I'm looking at grocery shopping in a whole new way.
I'm glad.
But even within all of this, it sounds like there's a lot of variation from store to store.
There is, yeah. And that brings us to our next point, which is how do these different retailers, how do they approach the whole idea of quality?
Yeah, let's get into that. We've got Walmart, Target, and Costco, the big players in the grocery game.
Right.
They each have their own way of doing things, so what can shoppers expect from each one?
Let's start with Walmart. They're the giant, right?
Oh, yeah, the giant. Huge selection, low prices.
Exactly. Everyday low prices. So their focus is really on affordability, making groceries accessible to everyone.
Makes sense.
But that can sometimes mean they're putting cost effectiveness first,
Right.
and that can impact quality, especially when it comes to fresh food.
Okay, so I might get a great deal on pantry staples at Walmart,
Right.
but the produce section might be a bit more of a gamble.
It can be, yeah. It really depends on the specific store, who their suppliers are locally.
Okay.
Some Walmarts have amazing produce sections, others not so much.
Right, right.
Their focus is really on volume and efficiency, you know?
Yeah, I get it.
So they might not always have the same level of attention to detail as a smaller, more specialized grocery store.
Right. Okay, what about Target? They seem to be trying to step up their grocery game with that, what is it called? The Good and Gather brand?
Yeah, good and yeah. They're definitely trying to appeal to shoppers who care about quality but also want a good value.
Yeah, that seems to be their whole thing.
Right. So Good and Gather, it's all about using quality ingredients. They offer organic options, some premium options. They're trying to compete with those more upscale grocery chains.
Okay, so they're going for that sweet spot. Affordability and quality.
Exactly.
Ambitious, but I think it's working for them.
Seems to be. And then you've got Costco.
Costco, yeah.
They have a reputation for really high-quality store brands, particularly their Kirkland Signature line.
Kirkland Signature, the holy grail of bulk buys.
Right. They've managed to build up quite a loyal following.
Oh, yeah. People love Costco.
Yeah.
But what's their secret? How do they keep the quality high while keeping the prices so competitive?
It's all about their business model. They have that membership fee structure, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Which allows them to operate on lower profit margins.
Oh, we're right. I see.
Plus, they buy in such huge quantities,
Yeah.
they have a lot of bargaining power with their suppliers.
So they can get better deals because they're buying so much.
Exactly. They're able to source high-quality ingredients and products at a lower cost, and then they pass those savings on to their members.
So it's like they're cutting out the middleman and using their size to their advantage.
Exactly. And they're especially known for their Kirkland Signature meat and dairy.
Oh, yeah.
People rave about their bacon, their cheeses.
I've heard that, yeah. It's like they're really serious about making their store brands stand out.
They are.
Yeah.
And that's a key takeaway here. There's no one-size-fits-all answer when it comes to grocery shopping.
Right.
Different retailers cater to different needs and priorities.
So it's all about figuring out what's important to you and finding a retailer that aligns with that.
Exactly. Are you looking for the absolute lowest prices?
Right.
Do you prioritize organic and premium ingredients?
Yeah.
Do you like the convenience and the bulk buying options of a warehouse club?
Yeah.
It's all about finding the right fit for your lifestyle and your budget.
It's like choose your own adventure for groceries. I like that.
Me too.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, it's about finding what works best for you.
This has been so eye-opening. I never realized how much goes on behind the scenes in the grocery industry.
There's a lot more to it than meets the eye. And the more you understand about those nuances, the more empowered you'll be as a consumer.
Absolutely. Speaking of empowering insights, is there anything else we should cover before we wrap up this deep dive?
There is one aspect of grocery shopping we haven't touched on yet. Something that often gets overlooked, packaging.
Packaging, you mean like the size of the cereal box and stuff?
Well, that's part of it, but it goes beyond just size.
Okay.
Packaging plays a crucial role in preserving the food, extending the shelf life, and even impacting the environment.
Wow, I never really considered packaging as something to be mindful of.
Well, for starters, different packaging materials have different properties.
Like what?
Some are better at blocking out light, which can degrade certain foods, while others are better at regulating moisture. Like, those little silica gel packets you sometimes find in food packages?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Those are designed to absorb moisture and
Yeah.
keep things crispy.
Huh. I always wondered what those little packets were for.
They're actually pretty important. And then there's the environmental impact of packaging to consider.
Right, right. Some things are recyclable, some aren't.
Exactly. Some materials are more easily recyclable than others, and some can even be composted.
So it's not all created equal, both in terms of protecting the food and protecting the planet.
Right. And this is where things can get a little tricky for consumers,
Yeah.
because it's not always clear from the label what the most sustainable or eco-friendly option is.
This is a lot to keep in mind. I feel like I need a degree in grocery shopping.
It can feel overwhelming, yeah.
Yeah.
But the key is to just be aware of these factors and make informed choices whenever possible.
Okay, so we've got brands, quality, freshness, retailers, and now packaging. It's like a whole grocery shopping matrix we got to figure out.
Yeah, it can feel like a puzzle sometimes.
Yeah.
But the good news is, the more aware you are of all these factors,
Right.
the more power you have to make choices that work for you.
Okay, so let's recap. Like, what are some key takeaways from this whole deep dive that our listeners can actually use out there in the grocery aisles?
All right, so first of all, remember that those big name brands, they're not always as consistent as you might think.
Yeah.
The same brand can be different at different stores.
Right.
Because of, where it's coming from, how long it's been sitting there. Even sometimes they have different recipes for different places.
Huh. So it's worth trying the same thing from different stores. You might be surprised.
You might be. And second, don't rule out those store brands.
Yeah, yeah.
A lot of them are just as good as the name brands,
Oh, right.
or even better, and they're usually cheaper.
Especially when you consider that sometimes they're made by the same companies as the big brands.
Exactly. Think Trader Joe's, right?
Exactly. Trader Joe's. All right, what else?
So, third, when it comes to that fresh food, the meat, the dairy, the produce,
Hmm.
it's all about sourcing and handling. Look for signs of freshness, see where it's coming from, consider organic if that's important to you.
And don't be afraid to ask questions, like at the butcher counter or in the produce section.
Yeah, for sure. Those
Yeah.
people usually know their stuff.
They do, they do. And last but not least, the packaging.
Right, the
Think
packaging.
about that too.
Choose recyclable or compostable options when you can.
Right.
And try to avoid stuff with a ton of extra packaging. It makes a difference for the environment.
Makes sense. It's the little things, right? Okay, wow. I feel like I've gone through grocery shopping boot camp.
I like that analogy.
I'm ready to hit those aisles.
That's the spirit. Remember, knowledge is power, especially when you're talking about groceries.
It really is. And, we've learned that it really matters where you shop, too.
Yeah.
Whether it's Walmart with their low prices and huge selection,
Right.
or Target with their focus on quality, or Costco with their bulk buying and those Kirkland brands. There's a store for everybody.
There is. It's all about finding the right fit.
Okay, so to wrap up this epic deep dive into grocery store secrets,
Yeah.
what's the one thing you want our listeners to remember?
I think the biggest thing is be an active participant in your grocery shopping. Don't just go through the motions.
Right.
Really think about it. Read the labels, compare prices, ask questions, and most importantly, don't be afraid to try new things.
Be a grocery detective, right?
Exactly. The best grocery shopping experience is the one you create for yourself.
So true. Well, I don't know about you, but I am feeling inspired to rethink my whole grocery shopping routine.
That's what we like to hear.
Yeah.
We've gone from just grabbing whatever cereal we see to really understanding all those things that affect the quality, the price, even how our food tastes.
And learned that every trip to the grocery store is a chance to make good choices for ourselves, for our wallets, and for the planet.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So go out there, be curious, and shop smart.
Happy shopping, everyone.